You are listening to Practical and Woo by Mindset and Manifest. I'm your host, Eden, and I'm so excited to offer you this bonus series called the CBRDBR series. This side series is a forum for us to meet interesting guests with unique perspectives and gifts discovered from lived experiences that are both practical and woo. Let's dive in. On this episode of the CBRDBR series, I'd like to introduce you to Victor Manzo. Before becoming an international business success coach, Victor Manzo established a successful profession for over a decade as a chiropractor, and then in his last 2 years of practice became a pediatric chiropractor. So then what made him make the leap from being Dr. Victor Manzo chiropractor to Victor Manzo success coach, 3 times author, podcast host, and speaker? He burned out. The way he puts it is that he was taught to work hard, grind, hustle, put in the sweat equity. He felt like he was continuously sacrificing his time, his money, his health, and family to be on this perpetual wheel of chasing his dreams, hoping that it would all be worth it one day. Something very interesting happened in Dr. Vic's life. He reached a financial milestone and yet still felt dissatisfied with his success. He even felt dissatisfied with the healing impact he was creating, a sense of complete unfulfillment. Soon after, Dr. Vic Manzo discovered and put together what he calls the Billionaire's Success Formula, a success formula he created from principles of quantum physics, neuroscience, universal laws, laws of nature, spirituality, subconscious reprogramming, behavioral neurology, and more. Since his personal career shift, Victor Manzo has guided the lives of hundreds of business owners, coaches, and chiropractors to achieve massive success in their lives. What I applaud Victor Manzo for is recognizing that even though he was checking all of the right boxes on the "I'm making it the way I'm supposed to" checklist, he allowed himself to recognize that success is an inner game and that the accolades most meaningful are the ones you give to yourself. If you are interested in Dr. Vic's body of work, including his books, podcast, or program, I will make sure to include all needed links in the show notes. In the meantime, let's dive into our CBRDBR. Well, hello, Victor. How are you today?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me on. I'm excited to be here.
I know. I'm so excited to have you here on the CBRDBR series hosted by Practical and Woo. I want to jump into all of the juicy topics with you, particularly your transition from being a chiropractor, living in a hustle-centric life, and shifting over into energetic work, moving into the business mindset coaching. And we can roll the ball from there. How does that sound to you?
That sounds like a plan.
Perfect. Okay, so I recall us talking about this incredible journey that you went on where you were living the life that you felt you should live, essentially. And you reached some like amazing financial peaks and you were kind of gunning and going for it and doing that, like, just do it, hustle centric mentality. And it led to burnout and it led to a sense of unfulfillment, which then launched you into a journey that allowed you to be where you are now. So why don't you go ahead and share with the audience a little bit about your origin story and your backstory of how we came to be here in this moment together.
All right, let's do it. So, yeah, I started out as a chiropractor. Didn't have any intention on being one, but life kind of led me that way. In chiropractic, we kind of say it finds you most of the time. And I had some health issues at 19 that kind of led the path to having chiropractic make the change of course. And I was just like, this is pretty cool. How the heck did they do this? Have no idea. Need to learn more. But, coming from a blue collar family, I was very ambitious to be successful. I saw a lot of things I didn't want to have in my life. So it came to that point of when I came out of school, I was studying all that I could. I was listening to the business gurus, whoever was the person to listen to at the time, all the books. They tell you read. I think it's like top CEOs read 60 books a year. I said, okay, I'll do 80 to 120. I was listening to podcasts. You got to sacrifice, right? You got to put all your fun away and you got to sacrifice. I was like, okay, fine. I'm going to sacrifice. I'm not going to listen to any music. I'm going to do podcasts, videos, just all day long, right? Did that for 5 years. Well, the formula works, I will say, because I did hit my financial peak in 5 years. But every 4 to 6 months, I was burned out. And yeah, when I got to that point in my career, I was kind of really bothered in a way because I'm like, here I am, somebody who's extremely passionate about what I do as a chiropractor, but yet I'm facing burnout. Like that just doesn't sound right. And I was always told, hey, you do what you love, you do what you're passionate about, and it'll lead a very successful life. And I was just like, I don't know if this is the success they meant. I don't know if I want this. Like, yeah, great. I can have all this money and I'm making a big impact, but I seek fulfillment in life. So I was like, I don't know if this is, going to be for me. I literally at one point even thought about leaving the profession. Like, if this is how it's going to be, I'm just going to do something different. I don't think this is for me then. Did some soul seeking. I re-changed everything. I actually did everything the opposite of what they told me to do. So work hard, grind, hustle, 16, 18, 20 hours, get less sleep, all that. Okay. I went to sleep, make sure I was getting my 7, 8 hours of sleep. I was doing self-care first before anything else. And I still, I did work, but I cut my hours back a little over a year later. I was working like 50% less. And at one point in the story, I forgot to tell you, was I took when I made this change, I chose to take a 40% hit on purposely financially. Now the number 40% just ended up being that. It wasn't like I said, oh, to wake up one morning and go, I want to tank my business 40%. Let's just do it. We kind of repositioned our focus of where we were going. And I had a certain way of how I wanted to do things. And I said, I'm just going to go with how I want to do things and what I want to share as chiropractic. And that's what I did. And a little over a year later, we were back where we were. But I was working 50% less. And that became the cornerstone to where I started to look at things and go, maybe I think entrepreneurs need to learn this in some way, shape, or form. I think they're so burned out and they're so focused on doing and not being. And I love talking about the energetic components to things or the quantum world. And so I was like, I think it needs to be taught. It's not in that realm at all or not much. And I was like, I really, really want to feel like this is a calling. So I went to start to do this as like a side hustle first. And then from that moment, I was tired of being living in Illinois with how things are and so forth. With and just I lived in one of the highest property taxes counties, and sales taxes one of the highest. Just taxes are crazy. So I was like, I don't want this. I want to have less taxes so I have more money to invest in the future and so forth. After a couple of years, COVID hit. My wife kind of jumped on board and said, "Okay, I see what you see." And from that moment, we made a transition. In the transition, we couldn't sell our chiropractic office, so we made a choice to just walk away from it. Which I look back and I'm like, that was a very bold move, but it was one of those things where we did that to start a family because we were tired of waiting. From that moment, though, I went full time in the coaching then. So I've been coaching now for over 4 years, and it's been a blast. It's been a joy.
That's wonderful. And how do you, I heard you say like a couple of things that I would want to dive into with you, like you recognizing that you're being asked to sacrifice and give up fun and play. So I felt that mind seed kind of illuminate when you were sharing. But also, what has that transition been like for you? What was it like to, go through school, have all of these skills that you thought were going to be used for a specific purpose, and then be essentially invited to shift? A lot of people are afraid to make that jump, especially if they've spent money and time and energy into that specific education. I know for me, I'm a lawyer by trade, and so I get a lot of questions like, "Are you upset that you went to law school?" And I say, "Absolutely not," because everything that I learn and every lesson I receive along the way can and will be used as a transferable skill as my journey continues to unfold. And I find that I can draw upon a wide database. So like, how does chiropractics for you translate into transferable skills for what you offer now? Do you agree with this philosophy?
Yeah, no, I mean, chiropractic is a very vitalistic approach. We look at things from a holistic standpoint rather than most of the world. We look at things from a reductionist standpoint, which we reduce down to a little thing. So when it comes to the work of what I do from a coaching perspective, it actually is very easy to take a lot of the skill sets. I was already doing coaching with my client, my patients. I mean, I'm guiding them through a process, having them trust the process, and here's where we're going to get to. It's not about your pain, even though they're coming to me with symptoms. I'm educating them that it's way beyond that. It's about function and being optimal, adapting. Basically, health is adapting to your environment. So, showing them what that looks like and working them towards that, and then they're learning like, well, I feel worse today. Okay, that's just it's part of the journey, right? We're going ups and downs. It's kind of like business, right? We go up and down. Health and finances are very identical to explain because health is not a linear trajectory. It's not just, oh, I do this and this is what happens. We've been conditioned that through the medical model system, like take this pill and you're going to be perfectly fine with your health. That's not how health works. It's actually the total opposite. And business is the total opposite too. It's not, oh, you just hire this person and you're going to be successful eventually. Doesn't work that way, because why does it work for some and not for others? You can have you can have 100 people and they all can do follow the same systems to get to success. And what ends up happening is you only have a small percentage of them who do, maybe sometimes 40 or 50%. I'm just throwing numbers out. But at the end, why did the other ones fail? Why do I always look at like Tony Robbins' work, right? There are how many people have been to like Unleash the Power Within, or I know a lot of entrepreneurs have gone and done that stuff, and they're all excited, they're all pumped, and then all of a sudden, nothing changes in their life. Nothing. The massive growth doesn't happen, and so my always curiosity is why does that go that way? Why does that happen in that way? Why does that process go? So that's kind of where I've taken the skills from there and transferred it over into the coaching. But I still do chiropractic. I don't practice, but one thing that's nice about being a chiropractor is I can always go around and temp every once in a while. So sometimes a chiropractor needs coverage work, and it's nice to like go in an office for a couple of days and just get away from my day to day. Actually, to be honest, it's one of the things where I do it, and just really practice my skills on what it is that so I don't lose my adjusting skills, because that's the investing side. I practice so much with that, and it's like martial arts. It's like anything else, like playing an instrument. If you don't do it, you eventually lose it. So it's like I want to make sure I'm staying up on that as much as I possibly can. And I get paid a little bit. I try not to look at what I used to make per hour versus what I get paid for a day, because that would not make me happy. So I'm like, it's not about that anyhow. I'm not doing it for the money. I'm just doing it to go into an office, ingest and have fun, and then walk out at the end of the day. Don't have to worry about anything.
Right. And variety is the spice of life. So it's good to have, different pots to put your hands in, essentially. So, what along your journey have you discovered in terms of the optimization of both, let's say health and business? What have you discovered is the why? Why doesn't the formulaic approach work? And I would love to dive into this topic with you a little bit like more as like a collaborative conversation, but I would love to hear from you first. Like, what is the sort of clues? I don't necessarily think that we get like a solid answer, but as our journeys unfold, we get these like really nice clues about like what might actually be happening behind the scenes. So what is that correlation that you discovered by
Yeah, I
asking
love the
that
whole
question?
I love the whole gentle clues thing. Because the way I get messages are never anywhere near the full answer. It's like, here's this, and it's like, okay, what does that mean? What context? What framework? How does that go? And I'll just be like, this is what it is, and that's it. And I'm like, yeah, that means nothing to me, but I know eventually it'll mean something.
Yeah.
Right?
10 years later, you're like, wow, my
And I
goodness.
think that's part of life too, right? Because like it's one of those things like looking at my life, if you asked me 10 years ago, hey Vic, would you get out of chiropractic and just do coaching? I look at you and be like, heck no, I'm going to be here for a very long time. I'm going to practice until the day I die. And here I am 10 years later, out of practice and doing the whole coaching gig. And so it's kind of one of the things where you look at your life, it's just things come up in life. And I hope this is going to answer the question, but things come up in life where um, it's a clue. You just may not know it at the time. Like for me, I teach a lot on feelings. So you become aware of the feeling and understanding the feeling. So then it kind of guides you. So when it feels good and you're resonating and it's that like deep inner feeling, you're like, yeah, I think this is somewhere I need to go, or this is what I need to do right now in my life. And don't get me wrong, the transition has not been always like sunshine and rainbows. A lot of times people they go, oh, yeah, I made this huge transition. It's like everything looks great, everything looks like it's going well for you. It all worked out. I'm so happy. I'm like, yeah, things are working out. It's a process. I'm still not where I was from a financial standpoint from my chiropractic business, but it's one of those things where it's there's a lot I've been learning about myself along the journey, which actually excites me more because I know it's preparing me for something greater, for
Mhm.
something larger, or for something more of what I want to accomplish in my life. But sometimes the clues are so subtle, I miss them, to be honest. It's just, it's like life. Like I'll sit back and I'll be watching a movie, right? Movies, I don't know. Sometimes it's movies that'll come out and I'll sit there and I'm watching a show and I've heard them say all this different words and verbiages. But because I heard something in a meditation, then all of a sudden I'll be watching the show. And all of a sudden it's like, this is why we have you interested in the show. Look at this, look at that, look at the pattern. This is part of your life. This is where you're doing. This is your journey right now. And I'm like, man, get the heck out of here. You gotta be kidding me. And then I start like playing the film. I go, I gotta stop the movie. Hold on. Let me just see what I'm just watching and seeing how it correlates in my life. And it does. And I'm like, this is crazy. I needed to hear this. I needed to get into this kind of a process. Because it gives me that reassurance sometimes. Because we all have. I mean, I don't know. At least for me, when I made this jump, I mean, I was very confident, and then it was a whole different experience than what I'm used to experiencing. And I was like, okay, I got to learn here. This is not going to be as easy as I thought. I'm gonna have to do a little bit more. There's some learning curves I'm gonna have to do with this, and that's kind of been some of the journey. But when you get those clues and you kind of they kind of resonate, and you're like, all right, I'm on the right path. That's what I look for. I'm like, this is the reassurance I need. Yep, I'm here. Okay, good. Thumbs up. I'm moving. I'm going to continue moving forward.
Yeah, don't you love that when in your reality or like even just by like let me just relax and watch a movie right now and all of a sudden there is like the exact answer to a question you were asking comes up in that movie you randomly decided to click on Netflix. This would happen to me a lot when I was in my academic life. So I went straight into law school from my undergraduate degree. And so I was essentially just in school since I was a kid. Like school was all I knew, essentially, in different degrees or another. And I would take breaks by watching TV, reading books, whatever. And there's this like part of your mind that is like, why are you taking a break? Right. Like that societal, like, you shouldn't be taking a break. You should be working. And I would ignore it because everybody needs breaks. And we can also talk about why that is here as well. But everybody needs to take breaks, and rest is such an integral part about also just living a fulfilling life, right? Like rest is a whole half of the pie that we're dealing with. Anyway, the point of what I'm saying is I would watch these movies anyway or read these books anyway, and I would get ideas to make my assignments better that I wouldn't have otherwise had access to. And then those assignments would go on to earn like top marks. And so, like, if you translate that academic experience into like a business experience, that rest that you might take could lead to a revolutionary idea that actually gets you the clients or the accolades or whatever it is that you're like hoping to draw into your life that you feel like will scratch the itch that you're trying to accomplish, right? Like, do you feel this in your life as well?
Oh yeah, it's kind of interesting how I mean, and the thing is, I'm not, and for the listeners, I'm not looking for it. Like I'm just trying to disconnect and just watch something and enjoy. Lately I've been into like medieval stuff, so like 1200, 1600 movies, and it's just like that's just been my interest. And then literally, I was just this this show interests me. I was like, why do I feel called to it? Let me watch it. And then I had a meeting with one of my intuitive person I work with, and then all of a sudden, here we go. I go watch the show, and it's literally all the little clues that came up. It was in the show. That's a prime example of what I was just sharing, and I'm going, huh, okay, fulfillment. This is my path. This is what I'm trying to create for myself. Here's who I'm trying to help. Here's the people I'm trying to focus on. Here's the kind of help I want to do. And it's like literally what the guy's doing. He's going against the grain. I mean, here's a client example. And the show's called Nightfall. So if everybody's interested, the guy's named Landry. I won't mess it up if anyone messes it, but he's going against the grain from what his people are trying to tell him what he should do. And he goes against it. I'm only a few episodes in, but and then ends up being correct and all these other things and whatnot. I'm just looking like, huh, Okay, going against the grain. That's usually a lot what I do. But there was a couple things that showed up in the show that like really resonated with the feelings of what I had going on inside. And then it's
Mm-hmm.
just like, this is interesting. All right, this is who I have to. Or sometimes it's showing my future self in a way
Mm-hmm.
of the certain characteristics I need to develop. I could be watching a show and this guy's just a strong leader. He follows his heart, no matter what, and all these different things. Um, and it ends up working out. It's not always a smooth run. It's always, he has troubles. He hits the roadblocks. He has the fear. He has all that showing up. But then he keeps pushing through, keeps believing into a higher power and so forth. And he keeps seeing the vision and he goes through. And I'm like, and I love it. And they use the terminology I use. So I'm like, okay, if it's the same terminology what I'm using, that's even another clue that's like, this is something that, is for me to take in and look and see what is it trying to tell me.
Oh, that mirror. It's so cool. Like when you actually tap in and turn yourself into the awareness of what is unfolding like outside of you. Like, right? That mirror reflection of support and guidance. Honestly, like in a world where we so often feel alone or like othered or, by ourselves, we fall into some pits of despair. I know I've had my fair share of those before. You can really start to trust and lean into this understanding that like you're being heard in some way or another, even if it's by yourself, through yourself, like in this like meta. I know this might sound confusing to some people, but like, do you know what I'm trying to say?
I know exactly what you're saying, 100%.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so earlier in our conversation, you were talking about how you were essentially conditioned to believe that you had to sacrifice in order to be successful and give up play. And I think this could be a really good bridge point for us to talk about the importance of play in our lives, as well as rest, as well as, taking breaks, as and all of those fun subjects. So,
Let's do it. Yeah, I always love using when it comes to these things, right? Because it's all about just got to keep working harder, 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 grind, hustle, grit, all that stuff, mental resilience and mental toughness and whatnot. But let's just look at nature, right? Because I believe nature is a little smarter than us. That's just my opinion. I mean, it's only been around a few million more years at least, more like billion, but we'll just go with a million, just make it seem modest. But when you look at like, for example, like our heart, right? It's always been thought that the heart works 24 hours a day. It never takes a break.
mm-hmm.
That's the old adage thinking, right? But science has shown that the heart only works really about 9 hours a day. So it basically rests for the other 15. And for those who are like, I don't believe it, well, what happens is heart makes a contraction and relaxes. Heart just makes a contraction and it relaxes. That's what it's doing. It contracts and it relaxes. That's what it does every single heartbeat. So there's a relaxation period. If you want to go to the neuroscience, our brain, even though many people want to treat it like a muscle, is not a muscle. It actually works the opposite. Well, muscles work kind of similar. You can't work a muscle all the time. It's actually going to shrink and get smaller. The same thing with the brain. You can't keep working the brain. The more rest you give to your brain, the actually better it will perform and adapt and shift and change. Kind of goes against what we're kind of being told. It even got to the point, the neuroscience even shows that there's only a max amount of time that you can work at a given period of moment. So, for example, it's around half hour to an hour and a half. There are some individuals can push the hour 45, 2 hour mark, but you have a certain given time that you can give your best effort, and then you need to take a break and get out, move 15 minutes, get around, refresh, get some food, water, whatever, and then you can come back and you'll be good to go again for a little bit. We even understand that there's limits to decision making. This is why, like Steve Jobs, always wore the same clothes. Now he has multiple pairs of black shirts and black jeans. Everyone can see the iconic image of what he wore, but he did that. There's a lot of other people do that because there's only a certain amount of things that we can do. And so when it comes to rest and so forth and play, right? The resting part is the rejuvenating side, but the play part is the energy boosting side, because we didn't come here to be workaholics. We didn't come here to be human doers. And I say we coming here is soul experience. We came here to have a being experience things. And so it is critically important to be playful and have fun. This is something that I'm very blessed to have a wife, because I can still to the day get caught into these habits. It's just being honest. I come from a background where I remember on Saturday mornings, if my dad came home from working his side job, If I was home playing a video game, he'd be like, "Why? What are you doing playing a video game? There's things to do, right?" And so if you say that to a kid once in a while, it's not really going to affect me. But when I hear it every single time, then it transitioned later into my life where I don't know how to rest and have fun. I've been working very hard at this for over 10, 15 years, 10 years now to try to break the habit. And my natural tuning, because it's in my subconscious naturally, because I grew up with this as a kid, is just get back into work mode, like just continually work and grind. And it's hard for me to learn how to play a lot. But I have a wife who's very good with that. She's more spontaneous than I am, so she breaks the mold. We complement each other really well with that, and it becomes one of those things where play is so critically important. I was just sharing this with a client last month. Things weren't going well. She was stuck in her head a lot, and I said, "What do you love to do?" And she mentioned a few things. I said, "I want you to do that every single weekend." And she goes, "Well, okay, but no excuses. I don't care if it costs money, put it on a credit card. I want you to do that every single weekend. That's it. That's your rule book from now until the end, till we get into spring. And then we'll reevaluate everything from there." She did that. A couple of weeks later, business turned around. A couple of weeks later, she's at the point where she's the momentum's back to where she was, and she's looking at breaking records entering into the spring. So there's the critical part of play rejuvenates us and rejuvenates our energy and makes things fun, so we don't get so caught up into the day-to-day mundane routine of the rat race or the hedonic wheel or whatever we want to call it.
Yes. Oh my gosh, I love that client testimonial, that example that you offered. That is so fantastic to hear because often you're like, why am I resting? Right? Like people will wonder, is this working? For me personally, I'm at a point in my experience where I want to feel pleasure, right? The ultimate goal at the end of the day is to feel good in my life, to feel good about myself, to feel good about what I'm doing, the choices I'm making, the experiences that I'm having. Can I actually derive true, tangible pleasure from it? Not to like, suck it for pleasure, but like to actually experience it for what it is with all of my senses and allowing those like, energetic sensations to move through the human body. Like we're in a physical experience for a reason. I remember very clearly being an academic, um, and also, really committing to this, like I must work hard and succeed at everything, blah, blah, blah. Like in the early stages of my business, I must work and do this and I have stuff to prove and do and all of that. Like I was living just in my head. And I remember I went on a couple of vacations where I could logically have a thought that was like, this is such a nice scene, but like my body was completely numb to it. I was like, oh my God, I don't feel. I felt emotions and like I felt when I was angry, right? Like, but I couldn't feel the minutia of a beautiful moment like in my body. And I realized like I could only live here. And so I have since gone for training as like a somatic healer and like all of this stuff, and that whole process of energetic integration has allowed me to like tap back into my body. But like for me, taking moments is part of living. It's the compounding, the collection of all of these little moments that are so wonderful, even if they're like hard, right? You can derive pleasure out of accomplishing or working through something that was previously or historically difficult, right? Like it doesn't just have to be like all sunshine and rainbows all the time. And that is not by any means what I am suggesting, but it is so important to live, right? Live wholly and fully in every single moment that you can and every moment that you have access to. So I wonder how this lands for you, this share.
Yeah, no, I love this share because you're very similar paths here where it's like smelling the roses. That was always a hard thing for me. It was like, what's the next thing? What's the next thing? What's this? And then you live in these constructs, right, in our mind and how things are, what they should be, or not really soaking up the experience of life, being in that present moment. In other words, the power of now, or like Eckhart Tolle would say, or something like that. And there came a period where we when we can get out of our heads, because we do live in our heads so much more now, especially in today's era with the information era, We are so much thinking, everything about life is a construct to reduction thinking, to where like this, if you're going to do this, this is what life is here. If you do this is what life is here. If you're this type of view or that have this type of thing, this is where you are here versus here. And it's putting people in boxes with labels, and we're so label loving now. Not that I'm not against labels to a certain degree, but labels create more separation, and it creates less color, and it makes things more black and white because that's leading with mind. It's great to identify things because we need to a certain degree so we can define it, but define it in your own way. We're losing that art too, where if this means that and that's it, and that's universally that's how it's going to be. Where in reality, I mean, when I define something, let's say like the word success, how I define it's what's going to matter to me, not because of what the dictionary says or so forth, because how I define that or what definition I accept is going to be more of my reality to that in some way, shape, or form. But we're talking about present moment, so it's one of those things where it's been a journey of mine to get into that state, because when we can get back into that present, there's just something different. I don't know how to put words to it. I can tell you things are going to be more colorful. That's going to mean different to every single person. I can tell you when you go eat food, it's going to taste totally different than what you're used to tasting. I know that for a fact because I used to teach on mindful eating. There is something about the present moment, and this is the way I kind of teach this and share this. Anytime you're in a state of anger, frustration, resentment, regrets, your mind is stuck in the past. It's not in the present moment. Anytime you have worry, anxiousness, anxiety, overwhelm, you're stuck into the future. The only emotion, at least in my experiences and what I've studied, the only emotion that I know exists in the present moment is bliss, joy, and peace. And I'll say four. There's bliss, joy. There's like calmness or stillness, and we could put a little bit. We could put love in there. There's just this beauty that exists, and I think we as humans, from just again just the conditioning of doing, and the conditioning of hard work, and this is what hard work earns you, and this is what you're supposed to do, since the late 1800s, early 1900s, and to the concepts of where we are today, where how we think of things and how our minds are so given into constructs, we are really missing out this element of really appreciating the moment, and it's getting harder and harder. I mean, the less of an attention span we have, the harder it is to focus. And the harder it is to focus, the harder it is to stay in the present moment. So and I mean, I saw this, and this is the one thing I saw as a chiropractor, working with a lot of patients. I got to know them, and I can pick up on energy, and I can feel energy, and I can just see where they are, and I can tell who's centered and grounded, who isn't. And I had technology to prove the effects of what that's doing to them. And it was one of those things where a lot of us are in that state. Even it's still a constant battle, even for someone like myself who's practicing and knows the things. Just because I know it doesn't mean that, I have it all down path. I mean, I'm human. I make mistakes. I have my own battles that I deal with. But it's one of those things where I used to joke a lot, like saying, the one thing I'm not good at doing, and I don't know, I just haven't put the energy into it, is mindful eating. I just love to eat and devour and be done with it. But everything else I've gotten better with, being in that present moment, enjoying the moment as much as I possibly can. It's a game changer when you can do it. And there's many ways, and there's many tools and how to do that, and so much more.
So amazing. I absolutely love that acknowledgement of your humanness, by the way. So many people, so many people will misjudge, I find, in our society, like, oh, if you don't have it all figured out, right? Like, oh, how can I learn from you? Well, you can learn from a human because the human is closer to where you are and has uncovered more of the journey to where you're going. There is sort of a gap that is created, I find, between coaches and clients, where that coach will likely just be ahead of the client on the issue and take them along the path with them. And it's this perpetual journeying of, well, I just figured this out, so I understand where you are, and I can still feel where you are. I haven't forgotten where what you might be feeling, and I've resolve to uncover some ways in which you can resource that in yourself, or remedy that for yourself, or to live more fully, or whatever it is that the desire may be. It's like we have this tendency in our society to misjudge or to judge coaches or leaders or people who are like paving the path forward as like, you have to be perfect for me to trust you. It's like, no, I think you have to be authentic. You have to be honest about your struggle and your plight, and the fact that you've actually lived the path that your clients are on. I find that the clients that I serve are often a vibrational match to like what I just figured out for myself, like whether it's a couple months, maybe it's a year, like it's that subject that I've been so like consumed with that I like have like this is my next thing to like figure out for myself. Those clients are often like at the beginning stages of where I was when I was there. And I think that that's the beauty of life. We are meant to elevate each other and to guide each other as equal forces and equal partners, essentially, towards like a collective, more fulfilling experience. And so I really love that you shared like I'm still figuring it out. Yeah, if anyone says that they have it all figured out, they are being phony in my opinion. And to me, I think that like the bravery of being able to admit where you are still growing, which is a perpetual lifelong journey. That's really cool in my book. So yay. Woo.
I love that. No, I mean, but you really think about it. Like, I had a humbling moment happen years ago. Well, I remember my spiritual teacher when I was 24. Um, she looked at me and she was one day we were having a conversation, and she's just like, I'm amazed at how advanced you are, understanding what you know at such a young age. And she goes, don't take this the wrong way, but you need the experience in order to achieve wisdom. And what she was doing is just leveling my ego at that moment. And of course, I was like, man, I don't know what you're talking about, lady. I go, I know my stuff. I love learning and I know my stuff. Um, but it was later on in life where I realized, man, she was right. Man, was she ever right? And in chiropractic, we have a saying that the longer you're a chiropractor, the less you actually know. And I had chiropractors telling me this, and very successful ones. And I was like, I don't understand what they mean by that. Like, I'm coming out of school, I've learned all this stuff, and I'm like, I want to be able to hold on to this. I'm not going to forget this. But it was about 6, 7 years in where I started to understand what they meant. Because as a chiropractor, we make an adjustment. We're working with the consciousness. We're working with, people don't hear chiropractic in this way, but we work with consciousness. We're working with the brain, working with the flow. We're trying to open that up. So more consciousness flow means more light flows. When more light flows, that means more life flows. And the more life you have flowing, the more life you can express to the world. So that's the basic premise of chiropractic. I started catching myself telling patients, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know this. I'm like, you don't know? I'm like, well, I can give you some theories, but I don't really 100% know. And they're like, you don't know. I'm like, you know what? As I get older, I'm starting to realize that there is something that goes on that I just don't know how all that works. I make one single adjustment. It affects 38 trillion cells. How it affects it and how it changes and what it does and what's going to take the order of what, I have no clue. You're the doctor. I go, I'm just a facilitator. The other thing that humbled me too, though, is when I understood that there's only so much knowledge the mind can hold on to. And they've done studies on this, looking at what's potentially all the knowledge that's out there compared to what your brain can hold. And really, you can only hold like 0.00001 odd some percent. That's like nothing. And so when I thought about it, I was like, okay, my ego has been really deflated here. And I don't think it's a point to let the ego even get interest anymore. So I've learned to try to put that aside as much as I can. But yeah, I say the same thing. If someone says they have it all figured out, run away. No one does. No one. I read a book one time. I forgot what the name of it was, and it was what they said there was so great. I loved it in so many ways. We're just figuring out how to be less wrong. That's it. We're not. There's no absolute. Some people say, well, there is. If you're an absolutist, you're gonna think there's absolutes, and if you're not, you don't think there is. I don't think there's an absolute truth for everyone. There's just an absolute truth to what you think is an absolute truth. If you believe this is your absolute truth, then guess what? That's your absolute truth. But it's one of those things where I lost my train of thought with the absolute truth part. But that whole essence, I'm going to stop there because I have no idea where I'm going with this. I lost
Oh,
my train of thought.
I've done that. Oh my gosh, when like there's like, oh wow, this is juicy, and you're like following that train of thought, and then it flies out of your head, and you're like,
Where's
ah,
the energy? Come
not
back.
not meant to talk about this. Apparently, that's okay. I totally feel that. I was wondering if I do like to give practicalities of spiritual concepts and conceptualizations on this podcast, and so I was wondering how would you set the framework, right? And I do understand that there's no absolute truths, right? And what you're saying is you're like, whatever you believe, you'll see. Like, whatever you believe, you'll receive. So if you're a realist, your reality is going to look very structured and in that way. If you're a visionary, you might have the lens or the perception of exploring your life in a different way. And so what's a framework that we can offer the audience, or that you would like to offer the audience, of where they can begin playing with energetics, spirituality for practical purposes, and the overarching creation of their reality in order to have their definition of success, whatever that may be.
I love this. I think all things have to first start with the relationship and connection with self. And when I say self, I don't mean like, your smaller S self. I mean the capital S self, that soul essence. And so there are a lot of ways of what you can do, and there's not one that's better than the other. But when I was in chiropractic, when I had my own office and running my practice, I used to recommend a lot of breath work because it was a good reset to the nervous system and a whole variety of other things. Breath work to me is the easiest to do in this time of era, just because I think meditation's a little bit more profound than the connection side. That's what I like to use a lot. But breath work, it helps to reset the nervous system, because at the end of the day, everything's neurology. So we always have to look at what calms our neurology, what helps balance our neurology, and so forth. If it does that, then you're going to feel the essence of feeling at peace. If both sides of the brains are balanced, or synced really well, in a balanced state to each other, we're going to feel more that like in the zone, feeling more centeredness in a way. So it becomes one of those things where when we look at breath work, and it doesn't matter what type, there's so many out there: Wim Hof, Soma breath, holotrophic breath. Yoga has pranayamas. That means breath work. There's square breathing. There's so many I can go through. They all work. It's just which one that resonates with you, and don't get hooked on it, because there's a reason why there's so many of them. I used to be like, I'm doing Wim Hof breathing and I'm going to do it for the next year. And that's just how I was. Then I started to realize, hold up, I don't like how Wim Hof in the beginning was really good for me, but now I'm getting to a point where it's like, it's not, I'm just not feeling, I'm getting revved. I'm not feeling calm. And then all of a sudden I'm like, let me try, Soma breath. I interviewed the creator of it. Let me try his breath work. And I did it. And I was like, man, that's hitting the mark for me today. And then I started to get used to the feel of like, what do I need at certain days? Because nothing's ever the same. Life's always changing. You have different demands. Sometimes I need more Wim Hof to burn off things. And maybe I need a breath of fire. I have just a lot of anger. I have pent up stuff that I need to clear out. So breath of fire is really good to push that energy out. But the point I'm trying to make is any type of breath work is going to help you reconnect. Research shows that you can do breath work for 2 months consecutively, every day for 2 months, roughly, and you can have a deeper connection with yourself, what yogis take 20 years to get to. Now, I'm not saying that happens for everybody, but based on the studies, that it can get to that state for you, and it happens pretty quick. So breath work is a great way because it starts to shut the mind off, get the nervous system balanced. We influence the part of your nervous system we can't control, which is called your autonomic nervous system. Once we start to calm that down and influence it, we can get better what they call, and this is Dr. Joe Dispenza talks a lot about this. There's other people that talk about this, brain-heart coherence. Right, getting the brain and the body to connect with one another. And when we have this coherence, it actually radiates our field more. So not to get too scientific and stuff with it, but we can then have, when you have that coherence or the balancing of the brains and all these other things, we can connect deeper with ourselves. We can get information. Remember I was talking about, like, I get these subtle pieces of information. They don't give me answers. That's where it comes from. And it may not be in the moment. Sometimes it is. Sometimes it's me watching a show later on. And all of a sudden I'll be like, I'll get a message to go, yeah, here's the thing I've been trying to show you. See what's going on in the movie? That's what we've been trying to show you. I'll be like, ha, no, you haven't. Oh, wait, yeah, you have. Dang it. How did I miss this? And I start making fun of myself and laughing and all this fun stuff. But it's that journey. And the other thing is to have compassion with yourself. Have to get everything right nowadays. We have to be right in so many ways. There's no right or wrong. It's just an experience. So just go into it and do it and learn. We've gotten so much into a world now because of information that, oh, I have to learn everything, and then this is how it is, and I got to make sure it's right. That's not how we learn. We've been conditioned for years since the school system has been developed to go backwards against nature. Nature and life, you take the test first and you learn later. School, we learn everything first, right? You've been to law school, you went all the way to the top. I've been graduate chiropractic school. I became, we learn things and then we take an exam. Where life is the other way. You take the exam and then you learn, and it's going and understanding that process and taking it from that route.
Mind blown. Expansion has been felt. That was so articulate. Oh my goodness. I was mesmerized the whole time. I would love to know more about the resources for breath work that you've explored, and where can we direct the audience to if they want to begin to fundamentally discover different formats or types of breath work and their functions.
Yeah, Wim Hof is the most popular one. It's a rapid breath, a 30 rounds of it. So you take a really fast, deep breath in, and then you just let your lungs relax. So you're not really like pushing air out. It's just the pressure difference is going to let the air come out naturally. And you do it for 30, you do 30 reps of that, and then all of a sudden you hold your breath, and you can, it's amazing. I've held my breath for like the longest I've ever gone was like 4 minutes and like 40 something seconds. It's really crazy. And because I've trained myself as hyper oxygenating it, and then you hold your breath and you go into a hypoxic state. Now you're training yourself how to handle the two different states. We're challenging the body, in other words. But that's just Wim Hof. Soma is another one that I like. I've interviewed the owner of it and the creator of it, and he's a really cool guy, and he actually does the music for Wim Hof, which is cool. They're actually good friends. But he has a different way of doing it, breathing in beats. And you can go, I tell people, just go on YouTube and find someone you like, because there's so much out there now. Like I wrote a book and I mentioned like 13 of them in one of my books. And then I was like, but there's plenty more than this. And I bet you by the time I'm done writing this, there's probably another 20 others on there. Now I go on YouTube. Like I just did this today. I was looking and I was like, I like to do 30 minutes. I've been in this process of doing, and I've been challenging a lot of people every day for 30 minutes, do breath work, do whatever they recommend, just do it for 30 minutes, because it takes you in a very spiritual state, psychedelic state sometimes. I mean, you're just really in tune. Like today I did it. I was like, okay, what am I gonna do? 30 minutes. I was like, I don't know what kind of breath work. I want to do something a little different. So I just went looking, and all of a sudden I just saw one, and I'm like, that feels like I need to do that. It was 3 rounds. I have no idea what it was. I just did it. But man, I was buzzing, deeply centered, deeply calm. And I was just like, man, this is where I like to be. Of course, I'm like, I love to be here all the time, but that's not life, right? We can't, there's things I have to work on. That's why I'm here. But that's a great starting point. And then it's just being consistent with it, because it's not going to work in one day. It's not going to work in 1 week. This stuff takes time. I've been practicing breathwork for almost 9 years. 9 years, almost 10 years now. And so it's one of those things where it's a practice and staying consistent with it, but just commit. I can promise you at the end of it, it works wonders. And one of the things, just to add another tip to it all, I like to tell my clients too, where when I incorporate this, that journal at the end of it. Journal in the process. Sometimes you may feel compelled, but don't do it if you're feeling like, man, I'm just loving this bliss, I just want to stay here, I don't want to write. Then just stay there and don't write. Just stay in. Go by what you feel. Like today, I felt like staying in the bliss. I didn't want to write. I was like, I just love this bliss I'm in. And I held on to that for 10, 15 minutes before I was like, okay, I think it's time to let me get going now. But if you feel the compelling to write, then write. And if you feel the compelling to cry, then cry. Things are going to come up, things are going to show up, but it's one of those things that you keep connecting. And just the whole point of it all is we're trying to get back to 0 point gravity, right? That's the scientific term, but just getting back into the gap or the void, or getting back to nothingness, right? And just getting to that place. Because when we can get back there, all things come from nothing. And that's where we can really start to show our creative side, start to really deepen our connection, and so much more.
Oh my gosh, I love, my whole body is buzzing. Like I have just these little sparklers like in every cell, it feels like. So excited by what you're saying. One of the points that I really love that you're emphasizing is there's no absolute truth for everybody, right? So if one version of breath work does not work for you, it doesn't matter if science has shown that that type of breath work, leads to all of these XYZ results for people. If it's not working for you, You have to honor yourself and move on to something else that you feel inspired or inclined to do. So, like for me, I am not someone who can have the same morning routine every single day. I have some non negotiables, like, right, I'm going to brush my teeth. Hygiene's important, right? Right? Like, there's some non negotiables for myself as well as other people I might be interacting with in my everyday life. But I cannot do the same kind of meditation every day. I cannot do the same kind of exercise every day. I prefer more variety in my life. And so sometimes when you see these very ultra successful people who are saying this is the morning routine to live by, and you can feel so wrong or bad not being able to do their routine, but it's not meant to be a routine potentially. Or it's meant to be a routine for a day or for a season, but not for a lifetime. And so I love, Victor, your sentiment about like really feel into your guidance of what's right for you and to, you know, try on what works and to leave what doesn't. And it's always changing. And that's the fun of it. That's what I'm hearing you say.
It is. I mean, and this you're talking to a type A driver, personality, task oriented, all that fun jazz. So, like, regiment has always been something that I was easy to do. Like 4 in the morning, 5 in the morning, I'm getting up. Here's what I'm doing. Here's my morning ritual. Here's what I'm doing here. And it took a lot to get out of that mode to where it's like this morning, my daughter, I got this 8 month, she's 8 month old, 8 months old now, and as of yesterday. So it's one of those things where, like last night, she was just not having a good night. She's teething, so we expect sleep not to be the greatest. She needs to feed a little bit more often for comfort and whatnot. And I got up and I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna take it a little easier this morning, which I love having a schedule where, there's a certain point where I can. I'm like, okay, I have calls to get started, but I give myself a lot of cushion. So I was like, I'm gonna get up, I'm gonna hang out with the fam for a little bit and just slowly get into my day today. And I felt like that's what I needed to do. And I said, I'll do my breath work outside and ground. And then I was like, I'll do my workout later in the afternoon, and that's gonna be okay. My mind still plays games on me, guys. I want you guys to understand this is how human I am. I'm like, in the back of my mind, I'm like, I should have got up at 4. I could have worked out already. I could have been done with that. I could have been at this point already. I would have had half my day and I wouldn't be as stressed. Why didn't I just do that? And it's like, dude, chill out. Like, that's my inner critic. So I'll yell at it. Like, just chill. Like, I'm gonna get everything I need to get done. Who cares? Like, I'm gonna get it done. I'm gonna still take care of me at the end of the day. But it's still a battle because it's still there. And then inner critics, partially my dad. I love my dad. I make it seem like he's an awesome dude. I love my dad. But it's just things growing up, right? That's the inner critic in the back of my mind. And it's like, I know who you are. I know that's not me because I know that I'm going to get it done regardless. But I still have that impulse within my subconscious that keeps firing.
And right, that's generations of survival imprinting, right? So, oh my gosh, I could have these conversations all day with you. However, we are reaching kind of the end of our time together just to make sure that our episode is digestible for the audience, you know. We're in a shorter form content kind of kind of space. Victor, how can the audience reach you if they are feeling your vibe? What can they expect? I'll put your links and everything in the show notes. So if you want to know more about Victor Manzo, you'll get to hear his biography and see his links that he has available to you. But I want to give you a chance, Victor, right now to like tell the audience like where you might want them to come meet you in your space to play and to learn and to grow.
I love that. Appreciate that. Yeah, I try to make it easy. My hub's my website, empoweryourreality.com. That's where you can find everything. If you're a business owner and you're like, man, I'd like to potentially work with this guy or get to know, maybe is he someone who can help me in coaching? I do a free call to see, one, if we're a good fit, and two, can I help you? And if those two get yeses, then I'll share my coaching program and what that is. I have a podcast you can get access to there. I have books you can get access to on the website. I have classes that you can do. I'm actually coming out with a class. I have a class, but I'm offering the first week for free. It's all about money mindset. It's called Quantum Abundance and understanding that component. I don't think we even talked about that, but I'll be sure I can share that over with you. It just literally just happened a couple of days ago, and I was like, need to start doing that. And then you can get a hold of me on social media too. It's on the bottom left of my website. So everything is off the website is where you can find me. Come see me on social media. I post pretty often. Right now I'm doing like 5 reels a week, but next month is going to be 3 reels a week. I'm going to start taking it a little step less, but still sharing good content out there to just help inspire people to share a message that's a little different than what we normally hear, especially in business, really start to shift the minds. And if you have any questions or anything, reach out. I'd love to hear from you.
I love you honoring your energy. I love that you're serving the collective. You are doing it all. That's wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing. To our wonderful audience, I hope you have enjoyed this episode of the Collaboradabra series, and we are so excited to see you again soon. Until next time.